is if anybody's Echolink user, we just in the last couple of days totally upgraded the Echolink station. It operates remote to our Squaw Mountain repeater. So we've got a new radio, a new interface, and a new computer. A lot of that thanks to Scott, N0BA, for doing the tech work on that, and for K0RCW for hosting it. And anyway, it's been tested quite a bit in the last couple of days, and looks like it's working well. So we were having issues with the old equipment. We had a VHF, UHF radio in there that was about over 40 years old, best we could figure. So it was time. It was time to get something more reliable. I can't think of anything else club-wise. Hope everybody's doing well, staying well. I had my first COVID shot today over at Lutheran, and they really, anybody has the opportunity, I would recommend. Lutheran has their act together. I was in there and back in my car in about just less than a half an hour. They got it figured out. So anyway, can't think of much else. Any questions for me, club-wise, before we start? Otherwise, I'm gonna give it over to Mr. Robert White, and he'll tell you all about the ICOM 705. So hearing nothing, Jeff, I don't think there was anything popped up on the chat.
Nope, it's clear.
Okay, so we'll move right into the program, and I'll turn it over to Robert, and he'll tell us about, like I say, ICOM 705. Robert, it's all yours. And you're muted, apparently.
There we go. Is that better? Can you hear me?
That's better.
All right. Thanks, Jerry. Appreciate that. That's encouraging news about your shot, too. Thanks for sharing that. So, everybody, tonight I'm going to talk about a new QRP radio I've had for approximately 3 weeks in the middle of my full-time job. So, I've been on a pretty steep learning curve, and but I've managed to absorb quite a few things about it and have started to use it in the field, and it's getting me excited about CW again. So my dusting off my rusty skills and is definitely one of my objectives. But so the format tonight, I'm going to flip immediately over to, let's dive in and get our hands on the radio, and then I'll come back to some of the more statistics and pieces of information and in a PowerPoint I've prepared. But everybody likes to see the radio stuff first, so let's see if I can get that to work. All right, so here it is. This is ICOM's newest. It's a 10-watt radio, and its interface looks very much like the ICOM 7300. It's a desktop bigger brother, I guess I'll call it. As you guys know, I've done several presentations in the past several years on a variety of different QRP radios, including the Elecraft KX3s and the Yaesu FT817. So love them all. Let's just start taking a look at this thing. Right now, you'll notice it's on. The screen has blanked. So ICOM, my hats are early off to ICOM's engineering on this, and I may start to sound a little bit like a commercial for ICOM. It's not my intention. I really am impressed with a lot of the things they've done here, and I'm just going to try and uncover some of the key features and why it's been important, and why it's important to me, and why I care, and why you might possibly care. So obviously on a QRP radio at 10 watts, that means you're probably going to want to go out and at least sit at a picnic table, which is, well, I'm getting more and more active. As part of my health goes with ham radio, getting out and doing some hiking, walking a few miles a day whenever the weather allows. and taking this rig in a backpack with a battery and a modest antenna, or a not so modest antenna if you have a roll of wire, just get some fresh air, particularly important during this during the pandemic. So let me wake this radio up. So it drawing about 300 milliamps there in standby mode, and start to talk about some of the cool features. So if you're out in the field, everything becomes what? More challenging, more difficult to do. Those little buttons, your fingers get cold. I don't know, as I get older, I'm not as responsive or can feel as well as I used to. But this screen is the same size as on the 7300, and it's touch sensitive as well. So let's just look at a couple of things. It's an all mode. Our speaker last month did mention this radio in the context of an all mode, all band transceiver. So you want to do AM on AM mode, or SSB, or CW, or DSTAR on HF. It's all in here. And what I like about menus, and everybody knows just from being in this hobby for so long, that menus do not have to be intuitive. You can spend a lot of time with a manual. And I really haven't cracked the manual that much. A couple of things just to try and make sure I can answer questions from you guys. But operationally, I can choose my mode. So here we have, SSB, CW, RTTY, AM, data modes, wide format, WFM for as regular FM, DSTAR. Let's see, and then I also have several programmable. Oops, that's not what I wanted to bring up. I can go back. Software programmable filters too. They put, there we go. So I can set my filter size up. 3K. A lot of people on SSB these days are doing 3.6 kilohertz. So that's you can set the different filter sizes up within the radio, and that's kind of nice. You can save all of your defaults to a file. I have the RT Systems software, which I haven't played around. I have it for all my radios, which allows me to save. You can do it with the included software. It doesn't have to be RT Systems, but I just like their layout and ability to program things. Let's see, let me get out of here. There's an exit button. Give me this scope here. You can set its width, so I have minus 2.5 kilohertz on either side of the center there, and I can either hold the band steady, or I can move the needle along just by this toggle here on the front, center versus fixed. So here I'm holding the waterfall steady and tuning it. Otherwise, I'm at a loss for exactly the words, but it's the flip of that, right? Let's see here. If I want to go to, right here I'm on 40 meters. If I want to go to a different band, it's as simple as pushing the megahertz number there, and I can go to, well, I don't know, let's go to 20 meters. And okay, my waterfall went away, but okay, so this leads me into a side topic, which is there is no tuner in this QRP radio. And generally the feeling is if you're running QRP radios, you should be running a resonant antenna, or in my case, I have an Alex loop sitting behind me. And the loop here has a knob on it, so I can hand tune that. And the Alex loop has a little LED that tells you when you're resonant. So it works pretty well on 20 meters and 40 meters, much below that. You probably should use something else in the field, maybe an outboard tuner. Or, the QRP radios cry out for a resonant antenna for sure. Now that said, ICOM is coming out with a unit that will attach to this. There are a couple of antenna tuners on the market. I haven't played with any of them. I've just used my mag loop, and it works really well. Okay, I will look. We'll explore some more of the features here in a minute. I'm going to turn this to the side and show you what we have on the side of the radio. Either side. Make sure I get the focus nice on that. So I have handheld microphone, and it's kind of small. It's not. Let's see, what am I? Oh, I can show you exactly how big it is. What about this? So pretty small little microphone, only 3 or 4 inches long and maybe a couple of inches wide. The sound quality is pretty good. I'm inside, so I can't. I have a video later that shows this thing receiving real FT8, but inside my house, I don't really get any. This is meant for outside, so it's the conundrum of doing presentations unless I set up outside. Maybe in the summer I could do that. But the sound quality is pretty good. A couple of buttons on here to A and B are programmable. I think by default they go to VFO versus memory, up and down the tuning here. So great. You can also plug in. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit more tightly. There we go. Speaker connection. Down here is a little rubber enclosure. And it has an SD card in there. You can see that. Okay, so what that means is you can store your voice. When you turn around during contests and somebody's saying CQ, CQ, CQ all the time, well, odds are that's a recording. And so you can do that too. We basically record voice macros, that sort of thing. This is a ground lug here, so you can ground it all up, and there's a little connector on top. I haven't done this yet, but you use one of those circular key connectors, and you can hold these cables in place so you don't damage these cables. This is a BNC connector, so there's just one connector for both HF and UHF and VHF. So, if you're doing that kind of thing, you might need a duplexer, but I think it's just as easy to swap out the antennas. I don't find when I go out, I usually have an HT and connection to a repeater. So, but it's this. And then why did they do that? Some people debate, well, is that a design flaw? It really was. There's not any room to put an additional connector here. So it was really about real estate on this radio. This whole thing weighs about 2.4 pounds. And considering all the things they packed in here, it's a pretty big win, because your enemy is always extra weight, right? So before, when I had the FT817, I had it in a mounting, I had mounting handles, I had a frame for it, I had fairly big battery, I had the LD2 tuner with it. I mean, the whole thing was pushing 20 pounds. And now almost everything you get, the basic radio and all the internals. Another big win is that we're down to one cable for running digital modes. So anybody of you guys who play the digital modes know that you used to have a cable for to the signal link, and from the signal link, and a control cable for serial commands, and and a computer, all this stuff. Still need a tablet at least. I mean, you don't have to. It just depends what you're trying to do. Digital mode. I mean, I have a Microsoft Pro 7, which is too sidetracked, but it's kind of tiny too. There's zoom out here, and it's this size. So this is a full Windows 10 computer, and it's pretty rugged. So between that and the radio, and it weighs about a little bit less than a pound, so it's pretty convenient. All right, and Jerry, if anybody asks questions, I can't see the chat, so just interrupt me or pass them along if somebody has a question. That's fine as we go along. So let's look at the other side. And I have this on a little desk tripod called the Manfrotto. And on my PowerPoint, I list all these resources, so I'll print it to a PDF and send it along to the powers that be for if you want to check out any of the links. But this desktop tripod is extremely useful. On the bottom of the radio is a tripod mount, and I don't know, you can see that, and it doesn't come with the radio, but it's super convenient. So you just get this unit, and underneath it has you mount some really cheesy little pads. So this is by far a better solution, and even a standard camera tripod would work just fine. So let's look at some of the other things we've got here. So underneath this rubber, and this thing is obviously designed to keep the elements out. I mean, it's a sensitive piece of equipment, but it has much more design towards keeping the water out of these connections. And it actually has a rating I mentioned later in my PowerPoint about this. This will connect to a power amplifier, also connects to a tuner via cable control tuner, so you can push the buttons on the front and it'll tune up. And down here is connection for the key, paddle key, and then there's a mini USB, standard mini USB connector. I mean, I kind of wish they had put a USB-C connector, but they probably had, that just seems to be where everything's going. But they did it, and that's okay. At least it isn't something weird and proprietary. So let's talk about the power supply for this thing. So what's really cool about this radio is that you can charge it and operate it 3 different ways. Either in the back, this battery is the same as for an ICOM HT. I can never remember the model, but I just have it right here. The computer's logged me out. The ID51A is the ICOM HT, and so it's hot swappable. So if you can run off of a battery, or you can run off an external battery, like I have a BioInno 12-volt lithium-ion battery, and so let's say you're running off of that, you can plug in one of these HT batteries and run off of that. It will only run the unit at 5 watts, so keep that in mind. The external battery it will run at 10. But if you're running on the external battery, you can swap out the HT batteries and continue operating or receiving, doing whatever you're doing. You guys know, if you turn off your radio in the middle of a digital mode and you're running some software, that usually is a mess. All right, things do not close down politely. So that's kind of a neat feature. It also will charge and operate from the USB mini port. So, and then the 4th way you can charge this, you can recharge the, what is it? I'll talk about how long it takes to charge these batteries, but it's at worst 2.4 hours. And if you use the rapid charger from ICOM, it's 2 hours. So that's pretty amazing. And these HT batteries are actually in the world of that type of commodity are pretty inexpensive. I mean, some of those radios, HT radios, they're not, but these ICOM ones are not too bad. I think they're 30. If you dare risk some of the knockoff ones on eBay, you can buy it, copy and enter, right? But even the official ones are not that expensive. I haven't bought a second one yet, but it probably will this year. It runs for a long time. I mean, obviously it depends on your operating ability or desire, but depending upon your duty cycle is what really drives that. So let's flip back around to here. It went to sleep on me again, which is fine. Let's tap that. All right. Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the. Let me zoom in here, so you can get it, guys. I spent a lot of day fiddling around with the lighting and make sure. So many of these YouTube videos, it's hard to see what they're doing because the radio is black and it really needs good lighting to see all the functions. So there's a lot of buttons at the bottom. You can quickly access pretty much anything you'd want to do. the scope, and the buttons also will you can hold them down a long press, and they typically will have additional functions. So we'll look at an example of that. We've got, and I apologize, you know, if I do this in 2 more months, it'll be a lot slicker because I'll have a lot more experience. But some of that's good. I try to keep a fairly open mind towards some of these things. The SWR meter, you can run a graph and keep track of what your SWR looks like according to how you're tuning around. So they go kind of crazy with all of that. What else? Voice recording. So you can, and then I mentioned you could save macros into one of 8 different places and save them to the SD card. Another thing you can do is it date stamps and time stamps your, this is really, really important. It date stamps and time stamps your QSOs so that you don't have to log them in the field. So you can get home and basically do all your logging at home. You don't have to do that live anymore. So I really like that feature. When it's 20 degrees, you just get a little task loaded. So that's really is a nice thing to be able to do that. Let's see, has Vox. So one thing that's nice is you can hold down the Vox button. So if you push Vox, turns it on. If you hold down the Vox button, you can set all the traditional Vox parameters: gain, anti-Vox, delay, voice delay. So that's really slick. Let's see, a quick set button. Oh yeah, GPS. So another problem that you guys working with digital modes may have experienced is that if you're out in the field, getting a good time on your equipment is tricky sometimes, and unless you have a special card for your Raspberry Pi. But this solves all those problems. So because GPS has a very accurate time signal associated with it. So you know,
Robert, Bill
yes.
Worthington has a question about how hard is it to access the logged QSOs?
You mean in what sense? To access the WAV files, or I mean, they are stored onto the SD. So
yeah, but how hard are they to get off of the SD card?
oh, it's easy. They're just files. They're just
Okay.
files. Yeah, they don't try and turn them into anything weird. So I've been pleasantly surprised by all of that. The other thing you can do, and I'm not a DSTAR guy yet at all, because I mean our club just doesn't really. I don't know whatever reason at least to my knowledge, we haven't been that into it, but might be changing, right? And it has DSTAR capability built in, and you could put the repeater list up on here, and no matter where you are, the GPS can work with the DSTAR list to tell you what the nearest DSTAR repeaters are. So I think that'll be super handy. Now, if you're going out in the boondocks, probably not going to be operating DSTAR that much. That'll be out of range of most of those repeaters. And I think you have to be around the front range for that. I mean, there's a few. I've played with it a little bit, and I think there's a few. This system has, you'll see there's a Wi-Fi symbol, and so connects to Wi-Fi as well, which is really the first radio I know of that has Wi-Fi capabilities in it. And what does that do? Well, it's also a backup for, I think they're going to do a lot of development. I think it'll connect to iPhone apps eventually. We'll be able to do all sorts of things, remote operate the radio. The NIST signals, it's a backup to the GPS system. So if you're inside, you're not necessarily getting the GPS signal, but you still want to set your time. Let's see, that's kind of cool. A lot of visuals. You know, you see the little GPS satellite signal there. Let's see if we can have maybe a better way to keep my fingers out of this. So you see that if that's holding steady, it means it's got a lock. If my SD card is flashing, it's accessing the SD card. There's two VFOs in the radio. Gosh, it's just on and on and on. I plug a USB cable between this radio and my computer, and I have a picture, a demo of this later. And that's all I need to run FT8.
Couple of questions.
Yep.
You mentioned NAST, so will this decode like WWV and WWVL to set the time?
It does not do that. It hits the server over the internet when it's connected via Wi-Fi.
Okay, good. And then Bluetooth?
Yes, has Bluetooth. And in fact, this headset I'm using is a Sony. I believe it's. I was able to connect it easily and pair it easily to the radio, and it worked well. And it works well. I really like. This has 70 centimeter and 2 meter capability, and it's just so nice to be able to use our repeaters with a headset like that. You know, that's just.
It could also be interesting in mobile, since a lot of cars have Bluetooth interface.
Yeah, it should work for that. The other thing that is a conundrum for me is that in emergency situations, not a lot of UHF, VHF radios have. There's a lot of noise going on in those environments, and you really want to have noise canceling headphones while you're talking, while you're using those systems. So I think it's just great. You know, these things, ICOM didn't design that, but using these things together is really great. So
it has an internal GPS receiver.
It does. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's an external jack for it though, so I think you have to rely on the internal receiver. Yeah, so that's one thing that's minor, but it's a consideration. Anything else? Did I get everybody's questions so far? Okay. I think I'm going to go to the PowerPoint. Kill the half an hour here. I mean, I could go on, and I could go on all night, but I wanted you guys to see this, to see it and kind of virtually wrap your head around what this unit is like before I jumped into just the PowerPoint stuff. So, but let's go over to there.
I think I read something about one of these small radios that they had two different battery packs. Is this the one where there's a small one and a big one?
That's correct. Yeah, they'll both. The only difference between those two is the number of milliamp hours, and I don't recall off the top of my head what it is. I think the big it is capacity related, and the big thing for me is I would take my lightweight BioInno battery and just run it. I would want to run at 10 watts. So, but there are people who won't say that's QRP. So it's up to you. This is a religion, and so one of the tenets is that by gentleman's agreement, very often it's 5 watts or it's not QRP. So anyway, all right, let's let me go over to the PowerPoint. You guys see my opening slide okay?
I'm not seeing it. That doesn't mean others aren't.
Okay.
Looks okay to me.
Okay. It's getting out to one. It'll eventually.
See it now, Bob. Robert.
Okay.
Sorry.
So my experience so far here. So some of the applications that we're looking at using this for is Summit's on the air, Parks on the air, which is a bigger and bigger thing. Also VHF, UHF, all band. Backpack. Sony has a really outrageously expensive backpack that you can pack this all into. I would suggest going to the camera store and finding a suitable backpack. But the Sony branded one is just really expensive. It's like $170.
I noticed on ICOM's site they show a optional backpack you can buy with the rig.
Yeah, it's just expensive. It's I think I got that pricing later on. I put it in here. Runs DSTAR. So I have run. Oh, that's the other thing. the Wi-Fi, you can set that this radio up as a DSTAR hotspot. So that's pretty slick. Haven't attempted that yet, but just like OpenSpot 3 or OpenSpot 2, you can set it up to function in that mode. So that's kind of neat. Also, sometimes get out in the middle of the field and some of your equipment needs to have a default Wi-Fi set up, and usually you can do it with your cell phone, but this radio will do that too. It'll set it up as an access point, either with or without the internet. And that has applications with logging programs too, I think. The other thing that's cool, didn't show you guys, but there's access easily to the FM broadcast zone. So you punch one of the buttons and you can pick up the FM broadcast band or the air band or just general receivers. The air band's a little unusual. And a lot of this, it's not that other radios can't do it, it's just the ergonomics are simpler. Works with the latest version of HRD, and of course the FT8 software out of Princeton, the WSJT-X, and I have used that some, and it works great. Basic specs, that harped on about its power, the touch display, general coverage receiver. The big thing, the thing that the QRP community was concerned about was what was the power consumption going to look like, and I think ICOM really did a win on this. So I measured it with my I have this little thing from PowerWorks. You can put it in line and measure the power consumption in it. 300 milliamps on standby and less than 3 amps at 10 watts. So that's pretty good. 500 memory channels, GPS built in, all modes, direct sampling. We'll talk a little bit more about the architecture in a minute. And the waterfall display is cool. One thing I did not show you guys is if you see an interesting signal, you can touch it, and the radio will immediately tune to the signal. So you touch it, it brings up a zoom screen, and then you can go right to it. So that's kind of a I had something. I didn't have a touch screen on my KX3. You had to turn the buttons on the PX3 unit, which was the PAN adapter, and this is just night and day, much better. Touch and get. A little bit of the technology overview, which is just sort of astonishing. There's a basic block diagram. So, your receiver, a bunch of bandpass filters, and then analog digital converter. And then it goes to this field programmable gate array, which is a logic chip that basically the manufacturer can put, basically implement a logic diagram inside of there. So a lot of the transceiving goes on, and I'm not an EE, but it read enough to boggle my mind. And then digital signal processing, and then that'll output to your scope display with some processing, and then back to digital analog converter, back to audio. So just a couple of real technical things. It's a 14-bit analog digital converter via pre-selector, and bandpass filters protecting the ADC from strong out-of-band signals. And then the ADC digitizes a portion of the HF range defined by the pre-selector. And I'll show you pictures of these chips in a minute. I kind of get into it because it kind of reminds me a little bit of some of the Raspberry Pi technology, just in the RISC. It has a RISC processor in it as well. Digital output of the converter feeds the field programmable gate array to create a digital baseband, 12 kilohertz wide and centered on 36 kilohertz to the DSP, carries out all the signal processing functions.
Do they tell you what the sample rate is on the analog to digital converter?
They quote it in terms of, the only numbers I've seen has been in terms of bits, the bandwidth. I have not seen that. I don't know the answer to that. That's okay. A good question. Yeah,
because direct digital conversion of 470 megahertz is a trick.
Yeah. There's I put a source link up there that has some detailed technical notes on the 705s. That's that AB40J did. So you can check that out for more of that type of information. So yeah, ARM RISC processor, companies I'm not very familiar with. It's this is kind of amazing. I mean, I put this in here is kind of amazing what you can, just how much the technology has changed in 5 years, right? It's incredible. And the Cyclone 10 is the field programmable gate array that is just, you know, ICOM is able to build a unit like this because of this technology, for sure. They can put their custom logic workflows into this chip. And a really good site for radioafixion.com is a really good site for tearing down the hardware and getting to all the what's, where's, and why fors of the unit. So using the radio and venturing through, put together a list of my key features. So again, all modes, the weight, the mic. I actually have an Alex mic, which was developed by the same guy who did the Alex loop. I think it's PY1HAD. It's just a really good piece of tech. It sounds, if you're looking for an alternative mic, I definitely recommend that. Yeah, so, okay, so it's a little bit off. So if you charge via the USB port, it takes 3.2 hours and 2.3 with the external battery connector, or 2 hours with the rapid charger, which I don't own. I haven't bought that. Probably don't feel an urge to for 0.3 hours. Yeah, I think ICOM's been really smart to put the same menu. If you know how to run the 7300, you will know how to run this radio. There will be a very small learning curve, and I don't know. I think my brain is probably 80% menu commands on various ham radios, and if I learn something new, something old falls out. So it's nice when, like the ICOM 9700. I don't have one of those, but I have 7300. You know, it's very similar, and you learn it once, and hopefully they won't reinvent it again someday. Probably will, but we can always hope. Let's see. The cable also transmits the CI-V data. Yeah. Oh yeah, I mentioned I connect this to my Windows 10 computer, and I haven't had any problems or need to install any random drivers. See, it works stock standard out of the box Windows 10. So PNC antenna connector. I would recommend. Now, when I showed you the unit a minute ago, I would just recommend you use a right angle connector on any of the on that cable, because it's easy. It would be easy to damage it if you don't. So I normally do. I had to borrow that for another purpose, but if I'm out in the field, I'll use a right angle BNC adapter. Yeah. So there is this software program called RSBAI that ICOM sells at an extra cost. And I think it's been adapted for the 705. It's a remote, what it is remote operation software. So I don't have this, don't have any experience, but I just bring it up to tell you that if you wanted to, for some reason, and I can't imagine what that reason would be, remotely operate the rig, you can. Here's some lousy features. So
they're requiring separate software for that rather than just putting a web UI in there, since they do have Wi-Fi.
I think that'll come along. They didn't seem to emphasize it too much. I had to dig around to find out it even existed. So that's probably the plan.
Yeah, the remotehamradio.com is a nice web UI, and you can, just run whatever from a laptop with a web browser. It's impressive.
Yeah, I think that will be a big area of development, and I think they've been pretty open with the radio and the API. So I would look for a lot for an ecosystem to grow up, kind of like did around Flex Radio's products. So a lesser degree. I really feel like ICOM could have included the little tabletop tripod for 15 bucks, you know, or just thrown that in. That, I mean, you really do need that. Radio's spendy, but I think you get a lot. And I think the design and utility, I will actually use this a lot more because I can, right? It's not such a slog to hook all these things together out in the field. So I really, just knowing my own personality, it's worth it. And by golly, in COVID, I can't really do much else, but I can do this. So see, you can justify things. You can justify buying radios this way.
You have a AH705. What is that?
The AH705 is the tuner that's been announced. And so I think that's, nobody's seen it yet. That's a rumor of the pricing. And we'll just have to see. But it'll, I'm trying to think. There's a couple of other tuners out there that'll work with it. Certainly, you know, the LD tuners will work.
In my car, I've got a ICOM 7100, and I'm using the MFJ 939i, and they provide an ICOM cable, and it just works great.
Okay. Yeah, they're you really, for this thing, you really want something about the size of a pack of cigarettes. So I think
it's bigger.
Yeah. So yeah, the backpack is 170 bucks. So you will only ever get to see a $170 backpack once if you. Anyway, I just
battery or something in it, or what's running the price?
It's custom for ICOM, and they added quite a bit of margin to it. So maybe it's, I don't know. It's just,
I've seen like suitcases and stuff that have batteries in them, and airlines aren't allowing.
Yeah, that's a. Anyway, I just think that's kind of a crummy feature. Hopefully, they should cut that in half at least. So anyway, my opinion. So a couple pictures that I just put in here, so you have some reference. Let's see, I did the front, back side. And, oh yeah, you didn't see the bottom. So there is the tripod mount, and then there's some weirdo other mount that has those 4 holes, and I'm not familiar with that kind of mount, but apparently some tripods use a 4-screw mount as well. So there's a tripod. And there's the HM243 microphone. Yeah, I've gotten good signal reports with that. All right, so then I set this up in my yard last weekend and took some video of it, so you guys can see. Here are all the pieces. There's my Alex loop, and then I got a, those little garage lights you can buy at Home Depot. That's a stand for one of those, and I bought a little piece of PVC plastic adapter, and I can put that mag loop antenna together in about 2 minutes. I think I brought it to the club meeting once. So you see my computer, my mouse, you see my BioInno battery, you see the unit on the tripod, and I have WSJT-X running on the computer. A little bit of a zoom in. So easy to set up. There's the battery. I love these guys. The products are rock solid. So I like this technology too. And the best thing, of course, is weight. Like that battery is, gosh, if it's half a pound, I'd be shocked. 6 amp hours. So you could run, if you're running 100% duty cycle, you could run this unit for 2 hours. And the reality is you're not running 100% duty cycle. You can. That's the other thing I've noticed. So I have the KX3, and the KX3 likes to heat up pretty rapidly. This thing is not get hot. So even if I'm running digital modes, Whisper. So Whisper likes to run for 2 minutes straight. It'll merrily run digital mode all day long without getting hot, has been my experience so far. Oh yeah, there's the infamous backpack. So no, it doesn't come with a radio. That's what you get. And you can bolt the Now, one nice feature about this is you can secure there's a lug in the backpack to secure the radio to the backpack so that it doesn't fall out of there inadvertently. And it looks like there's some mounting holes for an antenna on one side of it. So those are little non-standard things. Mysterious holes. Now, it doesn't really tell you what they're for. So the 705 tuner, just another 2 bits about that. What's cool about it is it has this IP54 rating, supposedly. I mean, I think it will when it comes out. And that'll let you mount the tuner at the antenna feed point. And that's actually a win with QRP. So it's not a win for anybody, but particularly when you only have 5 watts, you have to watch everything you do. So. And then I have a video. I think it's the next slide. Let's see if this works. Okay, here it comes. Probably hear me breathing. There's my waterfall. All the crazy people coming in on FD8 all over the world. Just amazing. And I did a QSO. This is a little rough, but he's over there in CN, nope, not CN85, somewhere. But it works. In CN85, yeah, that was his grid cell. I don't remember where that is. Far, far, far away. Still in the United States. And you really, I mean, I like this mag loop because you can, and there are several other competitors to it, but basically all the same concept. You set it up and then you can tune that knob on the bottom of the variable capacitor to tune into, I mean, to make it resonate. And that little LED light will flash when you key up to let you know that you are resonating. Does it work? Well, I just did the screen grab from PKS info. And yeah, pretty good. I mean, it just blows my mind that this is possible. I like these little nifty guides. Just mention them. I always get one with my radios, and it's basically the Reader's Digest version of the manual. I'm not as big a manual guy as I'd like to think, so I need cheat sheets, and this is good for, you know, you look up what do you want to do, and you can flip right to it, you can do it and get on with your life. So that's a positive. And then the various resources that you might want to look up. So did a fair amount of research on my own, run the radio myself, looking forward to running it a whole lot more. Probably selling some other radios I have. Pretty sure it's my field radio from now on. So let's see. I think that's basically it. So if anybody has any questions, be able to, there's plenty of material here. Other than that, that's what I got for you.
Thank you very much. The user interface does look a lot like my 7100, so I'm probably reusing a lot of software. It's really nice.
Yeah, that was fun to do. There's a lot of YouTube videos out there, some of which are good. You know, it's if you go on and if you're interested in this, it's interesting to get a wide variety of perspectives. The YouTube people are all pretty positive on it. I'm probably the only one that I haven't done a YouTube video, but I'll think about it sometimes. I've got enough equipment in here. Kind of digging down and finding out, the good, bad, and the ugly. I think particularly in the club meeting is important. I don't want to sound like I'm selling stuff for ICOM. I just want to have a QSO. That's really what I want to do. And I like tech, obviously. That's kind of where I come from.
Okay, Robert. Hey, thanks. I'm looking at the chat. I don't see any questions that popped up there for a while. Anybody got anything before we call it an evening here? One thing I remind everybody, I keep trying.
Question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it possible to do a quick demo showing you tuning the loop with the radio?
Yeah, sure. I think so.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's see if we can do that. So. All right. So, radio. Let's see. Let's go to a band tonight. I don't know. Let's try 40. It'll only go down to. So you can see no waterfall. Let's see. Turn it down. I've got my mic plugged in, so the sound's coming through the microphone. And you hear that the sound peaks. So when it peaks like that, that's when you're tuned, approximately. And you can fine tune it as you work a station. So there you go. That's really all there is to it.
Great, thank you.
All right, anything else from anybody? Yeah, go right ahead.
So earlier in your presentation on one of the slides, you mentioned APRS and short of running x-after or APRS droid with it. I have one also. I've not been able to. I don't believe it supports APRS correctly.
I didn't hear the question. About APRS?
Yeah, asking about APRS.
It should run packet and APRS both. I haven't tried it because I have that in my car, but it does not have TNC. Well, let's see. Yeah, it must have TNC source in it. But when I think, go ahead.
I've been able to get there by running like x-after, but no native APRS support.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's kind of funny how they position that, right? You got the GPS. Yeah, they did question. I will research. Haven't gotten around to that.
All righty. Anything else? Anybody? I just like to remind everybody, come to my mind that, our shopping season's kind of over for holidays, but if you haven't, if you buy from Amazon, encourage you to go to smileamazon.com and you can register DRC as your agency on there, I guess you'd call it, or not really a charity, but and then we get a little percentage of what you buy. It didn't cost anything extra, but the club benefits from it. So just a reminder on that. And I see another question. No. Okay. Anything final? Anything about the club for me, for anybody else? Yeah.
Yeah, this is Bill Worthington. We talked earlier this month about a program for February. At the rate things are going in my where I work, I don't think I'm going to get approval in time for a February presentation.
Okay, well, how about March?
March would be much better.
Why don't you shoot for March? I think we've got something we can plug in February. So great. That'd be great. Why don't you let me know on email the progress, and I'll we'll work it in. I appreciate it.
Yeah, apparently the USGS would like to review my slides.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to give out any secrets or anything. So,
No.
but thanks for, let's look at March.
Okay, sounds good.
Alrighty.
Yep.
Maybe they'll give the blessing. So, anything else? Anybody? Otherwise, we'll call it a night here at about 7:50.
Hey, Gary,
Yeah.
thanks for mentioning DRC on Amazon. I've got ARRL, and I'll be happy to switch it to DRC because you guys are local.
Okay, we appreciate that. Yeah. We get we get a few bucks from it, and it helps. So, unless you got another favorite, and it doesn't cost you a dime. I think we get 0.5% of what you spend. So, and it does add up. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Okay. Last call for alcohol here. Robert, thanks. Great job as usual. Very interesting. And everybody, I'm sure, got a lot out of it. It's a neat radio. There's a lot of cool stuff out there nowadays. Okay. Jeff, you got anything? We'll say adios.
Nope. Thanks, Robert. It was great. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
okay.